We're running a little bit behind. All right, so this is going to be skeletal system number 2, and this goes probably in your notebook on page 72, a right-hand page. And we're overlapping a little bit with our lecture from yesterday. Okay, because our lecture from yesterday, we talked about the types of muscle tissue. And so if I say something like, if I say it has striations and intercalated discs, what muscle type am I talking about? If I say this muscle has striations and intercalated discs, what muscle type?
That's skeletal.
No, not skeletal. Okay, it has striations and intercalated discs. That's cardiac muscle.
Yes.
Okay, intercalated discs. If I say it's only found in the heart, you know it's cardiac. If I say it has no striations and it's under involuntary control.
Oh, involuntary. That's cardiac.
No striations and involuntary is smooth. Okay, you guys, this is part of what we call studying. Okay? And it doesn't take hours. Let's say you got 15 minutes. Okay? You got a lot of homework in your other classes. I know this. Okay? But give 15 minutes to reading back through your notes every day. Okay? So that we don't forget what we've talked about in class. And so what were the two big topics of our previous lecture? The two big topics from our previous lecture were what? Okay, functions of skeletal system. I'm sorry, muscular system, functions, and
Like the joints.
and the different types. The types of muscle, right? Well, we ended the lecture yesterday, and I said, hey, I'm running out of time. Okay, so can we review together what were the functions that we talked about? The number one function we talked about was movement. Okay, number 2, we're reviewing right now, right? Posture. Number 3, heat production to maintain body temperature. But all 3 of these involve skeletal muscle. Do we have a function that involves cardiac muscle?
Blood flow.
Yeah, circulation. Right? That's cardiac muscle. That the cardiac muscle, when it contracts, the heart acts like a double pump and circulates blood throughout the body. And we have one more. Peristalsis. And that's going to be our smooth muscle, and that was the movement of food through our digestive tract. Right? So those were our functions. So now, in just 3 minutes, did that bring a whole, what we talked about yesterday back up into the forefront of your brain a little bit? Okay? If you had done that last night and then we reviewed it again today, that would have been 3 times you would have reviewed that material, right? And it would have been the 4th time you've heard it. Because we heard it in class, then you studied it at home, and then, Okay, muscle types. What are our 3 types of muscles? Okay, let's go cardiac first. Great. What do you know about the cardiac muscle?
Striations.
Okay, it's got striations.
Mainly found in the heart.
Only found in the heart.
Found in the heart. Involuntary.
It's involuntary. Good.
It pumps.
Okay, so it achieves a pumping action. So, the muscle itself can only do one thing, and that is to contract. The way your heart is configured, that enables the pumping action. Okay? I'm going to go to the next white screen, so don't panic. This will all be saved as part of our lecture. So if you miss any of this, you got to go to my channel, Zitterkoff Science, and look it up. I need to come up with a good tag, study anatomy with Jesus. Jesus will help improve your grade. Help you improve your grade. All right. We're still on cardiac muscle. So we said, what things did we say? We said striations only in the heart. It's involuntary. Any other characteristics about cardiac? What about these?
Oh,
Intercalated discs. Cells are branched. Huh? Okay. So instead of a cell just being cylindrical, they have like a branching pattern. So there's our striations. A nucleus here and there. They're not multinucleate. Okay, and then you have areas where you have this extra thick band. That's the intercalated disc. And that allows for adjacent muscles to contract in a uniform way, so you have a smooth contraction through the heart. So are those all the highlights of our cardiac muscle? Did that pretty much encapsulate all of it?
Yeah.
Did we learn about cardiac muscle before?
Yes.
Yes, when we did histology. Okay, what's another type of muscle?
There's skeletal muscle.
Skeletal, okay. Now, somebody besides Ruben, not that I don't love you, babe, but you got the answer, so I want to hear some other voices. Tell me something, MJ.
Connected to bones allows...
Okay, connected to bones. Allows for body movement. If I were to show you a slide or a drawing of skeletal muscle, how would you know that it was skeletal muscle?
Oh, if you don't see the intercalated disc.
Okay, but you see something instead. Okay, so it's got striations. Okay, no intercalated discs. No IDs, intercalated discs. What else do you see with skeletal muscle? Cylindrical cells, multinucleate, meaning here's a striated cell. It's like a cylinder. And within each cell, there are multiple nuclei because embryologically, that's a mouthful. When you are an embryo, multiple cells fuse together. Okay? And so lots of striations and multiple cells. And do you control this muscle? Yes. It's under voluntary control. Okay? We kind of didn't talk about this yesterday, but it was on the slides, but I didn't put it up, so here it is now. So tomorrow you would be ready to go with the quiz on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give us a quiz now.
Okay, you should be because we're talking about it twice. I'm giving you a heads up. And so every day you study like, hey, what if there's a quiz? What if there's a quiz tomorrow? I'm going to review my notes. What if there's a quiz? Okay, last type of muscle is, yawning on the video is really undesirable. You're not tired from my lecture, are you? No, never that. Oh, no. Okay, smooth muscle. What should we know about smooth muscle? No striations. Do we control it?
No.
It's under involuntary control. Where do we find it?
Hollow organ.
In your heart. Oh no, smooth. In the
Lion's hollow organs.
yeah, all the organs.
Okay, so there's a really long list. You have it in your respiratory tract, like your trachea. You have it in your esophagus. You have it in your stomach and intestines. You have it lining your blood vessels. You have it lining the urinary bladder and excretory tracts, like the urethra. You have it lining the uterus and your reproductive tracts, like not as much the fallopian tubes, but the vagina and things like that. Okay? If we looked at these cells, they would be long, pointed at the ends, uninucleate, no striations. Anything else we should know? I mean, that's basically it, isn't it? Right? Now, weren't you supposed to do a left-hand page on this yesterday?
Oh, yeah. I did that.
Okay? Notes are on the right-hand page. The left-hand page was that little drawing where it showed which part of the body and a drawing. This is why staying on top of your homework is so beneficial, because if you had gone back last night and done the left-hand page and finished your Cornell notes, then you would have reinforced exactly what we talked about in class yesterday. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go away from this, and I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. So we basically just went through all of this stuff here, right? So this was the diagram you're supposed to draw on your left-hand page, page 69. Okay. You know what? I think everybody can draw lines, and this is in your textbook, you guys. So, I mean, it doesn't, I'm not grading your artwork, I'm grading your effort, and, you know, there's nothing so difficult. It does not have to look exactly like this, but you can draw circles and lines and ovals, and that's all it is. Okay, and then this was the other types of tissues, okay? So smooth muscle, and then here we go. This is today's notes. You can either go on page 70 or page 72, okay? So most of the discussion in this chapter is really just going to be about skeletal muscle. We are going to talk more about cardiac muscle when we get to the circulatory system. We're going to talk more about smooth muscle when we get to the digestive system. The rest of this lecture is going to focus on skeletal muscle. Okay, so most of the skeletal muscle in your body is going to extend from one bone to another bone, because remember, its purpose is to allow for movement. And as it extends from one bone to another bone, it has to stretch across a joint. And so because it has to stretch across a joint, there are certain features, safety features in place so that it doesn't experience wear and tear. So I want you to visualize that you're a rock climber. And I guess if I was really a good techie here, I would have a picture of a rock climber and a rope, hanging by rope. So can you imagine you're a rock climber hanging off the face of a mountain, and you're hanging by a rope. And that rope is dangling over the edge of the cliff, right? So you got your, I'll draw a very rudimentary cliff here. A sharp cliff is El Capitan, straight up and down, and you've got your rock up here, your rope's tied around it. Here you are dangling on the side, and here's our rope hanging over the side. I'll even make it brown. It's tied around the rock, hanging over the side, attached to you. What do you think is going to happen to the rock at this point here where it's hanging over the edge of the cliff?
Pushing towards you, right?
It's pushing on the cliff, and let's say that you're swinging back and forth from that rope. What's going to start to happen to that rope? It's going to get stabbed by the cliff, and it may even start to fray and experience some wear. And oh my gosh, if you had a lifetime of hanging by that rope would eventually be torn apart by the edge of that cliff. Well, imagine it's not a cliff, it's two bones, right? And it's not a rope, it's a tendon. And instead of being the rock here and a person here, it's a couple of muscles. Right? So let's say that this is your knee joint. Okay? And this is your quadricep muscle up here, and this is your tibialis anterior down there. Actually, it's not two muscles, my bad. Bad teacher. On this end, it just attaches to the bone. Okay, so here's your bone down here. This is your tibia bone. Okay, your shin bone. And so when your quadricep muscle contracts, it pulls on your tendon, and it pulls on the tibia bone down here on the bottom. And what happens? What kind of movement do we have? I don't know. Contract your quadricep muscle. Tighten up your quadricep muscle. What happens? Your quadricep muscle is the muscle of your thigh. Okay, tighten that muscle, and what happens? Your leg extends. Okay, and if you do that motion, you can actually feel the muscle contracting. And it's contracting and pulling on this tendon that goes over your knee joint. Where it attaches here, it causes an extension of your leg, and that's how you extend your leg. Okay? Well, a lifetime of wear and tear at this joint, if it was just the tendon going straight across the edge here, guess what would happen? At this point here, you'd have wear and tear and breaks. So what do you have in your knee?
Patella.
You have the patella. And the patella is covered by a tendon. So you have a tendon and then a bone, a sesamoid bone inside of the tendon. So this is all tendon here. And this bone, the patella, formed inside of that membrane. So when we developed as embryos, we had mostly endochondrial bone formation. Okay, our bones formed inside of cartilage, hyaline cartilage. Some bones, however, like the patella and the bones in the skull, have intramembranous formation. So the patella, that bone, formed within that tendon. And it's there to help protect the joint, but also to decrease wear and tear. Okay? At that point of maximal friction. Okay? We talked about this yesterday, right? Origin, insertion, and body. That's part of your notes from yesterday, so I'm not going to go back over it again. Okay? So when we have, muscles don't grow directly to the bone. They attach to tendons. And when we do our chicken wing dissection, you'll actually see tendons. If you looked at your turkey carcass, you saw tendons. If you've ever chewed on a turkey leg, you get meat, but then there are like these really hard, strappy things. Those are tendons. Which they're not hard like that before you cook the meat. But when you cook the meat, the protein in the tendon changes. And so it becomes really hardened. I don't find turkey legs that appetizing because there's so many tendons in them. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. Yeah? If you've ever chewed on a chicken drumstick and you get that nice big piece of muscle, that's actually the calf muscle, the gastrocnemius. And at the end of it is this like chewy white stuff.
Yeah.
That's the tendon. That's the Achilles tendon of the chicken.
So wait, what's like the extra slab of skin? Like, why is it like, oh, it's fat?
Well, there's fat, and then there's, skin and extra. Then there's connective tissue. And you guys will never look at food the same way again. In fact, I have a friend that she hates ribs because she did so many dissections. The idea of chewing on a bone and gnawing on a bone just absolutely disgusts her. It's just, ugh. Okay. So let's talk about these things, tendon sheaths. So you understand that, like, when you have a sword, you don't carry a sword around just hanging out on your belt because you'd cut yourself, or you'd bang your sword on things and it would dull your sword. So what did they put it in? They put it in a scabbard or a sheath, right? Tendons, many of them in areas where they experience a lot of friction, will actually be in a tube that gets lubricated with synovial fluid. So imagine a tube, right? Okay. And running into that tube is your tendon. Okay. And see, it comes out the other side. Imagine a straw and a string, and you put a string through the straw, and you can pull the string on either side, but the straw protects that string inside. So if you were that mountain climber and you had your rope extending over the side of the mountain, if you put a sheath over the rope, that would protect the rope, right? At that point of maximal friction, that's what we have with tendon sheaths. Okay? Bursae are another way that we reduce friction in tendons, where the tendon is protected from the bones underneath it. Okay? So these are little cushioning pads. Just like little gel packs. And the gel inside is synovial fluid. So what do you think you call it when you have an inflamed, swollen bursa? It's inflamed. It's swollen. A bursitis. What do you think you call it when you have a tendon that is inflamed and swollen? Okay, it's an itis of some type, tendonitis. So now you understand, if you overuse a part of your body, and like a tennis player who's practicing their backhand and they maybe go at it too hard and then they have a really sore elbow, they could have tendonitis, bursitis. Okay, I have some tendonitis and bursitis in my knee after falling and breaking my ankle because I've limped for a year and a half. And so I have some swelling inside of my knee. Very painful. Okay? All right, so you shouldn't have to write down everything here word for word. You should be able to shorten it up quite a bit, paraphrase. Okay? What do you think the treatment would be for bursitis and tendonitis?
Ice.
Okay, ice is your first line of defense.
Tylenol?
Tylenol deals with pain, but it blocks pain receptors in your brain, but it doesn't decrease the swelling. Ice decreases swelling. What medication, over-the-counter medication, decreases swelling?
What does tramadol do?
Tramadol is a pain. Okay, how about ibuprofen?
Yes.
Okay, Motrin. And that is called a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, NSAID. A non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. So you try your ibuprofen for short term, but let's say that's not cutting it. Then you go on to steroids, and maybe they give you a cortisone injection into the joint directly. And that's more, and then they look at surgery, physical, well, hopefully we'll get physical therapy and so on. Okay, so here's a nice picture, better than my little drawings. Okay, so the bursae are shown. I gotta make a color that you can see. So this is the bursae inside of there. Okay, so you see how it sets over, and then this would be a ligament. Ligaments attach bone to bone. Okay, How do you remember the difference between a ligament and a tendon? Okay, tendons go muscle to bone. And I remember the difference by thinking about the tendon that we all know where it is. Which tendon do you guys all know the name of?
Oh,
Your Achilles tendon, right? On the back of your ankle. So your Achilles tendon connects your calf muscle, your gastrocnemius, to the calcaneus bone, your heel bone. Okay? And you feel that on the back of your ankle. That hard thing that you might have thought was a bone is a tendon. Okay? So that's a tendon. If you remember, okay, oh, there's my Achilles tendon. What does that connect to? You touch it. Oh, it connects my calf muscle to the bottom of my foot, to my heel. Okay? And then here we have a tendon sheath with the tendon here that connects to the head of the bicep muscle, which would be the insertion end of the bicep muscle. I'm sorry, my bad. The origin end of the bicep muscle. Okay?
What happens when you pop a bursae?
You know, well, then the synovial fluid would rupture out. I guess you could pop one because it is, you know, if you have enough trauma to the joint, but you would forever, I don't think it's going to grow back. It can't repair itself. So it would be like, I would think surgery and cortisone injections and lifelong problems with that joint, I would expect. But don't quote me on that, but I'm thinking. Okay, you guys have all heard of carpal tunnel syndrome, right?
yeah.
My mom had the surgery for it.
Okay. And she still has problems. Okay, so carpal.
Your hand.
Okay, carpal. These are your carpals, your wrist bones, right? Okay, carpal in the wrist. Tunnel. Well, when you have a structure and you go underneath it, right? And the tunnel keeps, you pass underneath the tunnel. Okay? So carpal tunnel. So this is the carpal ligament that goes across the wrist. And underneath it runs all of these tendons. So if you look at the anterior surface of your wrist and you wiggle your fingers, you can see all of those ligaments moving in your wrist, right?
Like, is this?
Yeah. Okay.
Those are your veins.
No, veins are on top of those. Okay, and your veins don't go straight necessarily. Your veins kind of take a different route. So you can see the ligaments or the tendons running. So on top of that is this sheath, okay, a tunnel. And through lots and lots of repetitive motion, you can cause inflammation, which will affect the median nerve, which causes pain, compresses the nerve, okay, and causes pain in your wrist, numbness and tingling, okay, weakness in your hands, you tend to drop things, increase in pain and tingling at night. So first line of defense is to immobilize the wrist, wear braces, right, to decrease the amount that you're moving your fingers, right? After that, if that's not working and anti-inflammatories are not working, then they would go in and do surgery and they basically stretch out that tendon that goes across, that ligament. Okay, I keep saying tendon, but it's a ligament. And they stretch it out so that it's not compressing on that nerve. Who gets carpal tunnel? Women are 3 times more likely. Okay, especially if you've done a job where you have a lot of repetitive motion. So data entry would be people who are typing for a living. Okay? I think we're going to see a lot more carpal tunnel because we're spending so much more time on keyboards, everybody, right? If you are a checker at a check stand.
Orders is when you're charting.
Yeah, you do a lot of typing.
A grocery bagger? Is that right?
Nah, maybe not. I mean, people don't usually do that for a career, but people will be checkers at the check stand for a career, right? They do that for years and years. Meat cutters, where you're just doing repetitive motion over and over and over again. Okay. Here's another one that you guys are going to start seeing more and more of. Trigger finger or trigger thumb. I actually had this happen to me. Okay. A trigger finger or trigger thumb is where you have overuse of a tendon from repetitive motion of a finger, like trigger, like you're pulling the trigger on a gun. And so about 3 years ago, maybe, was about this time of the year, I woke up one morning and my thumb on my right hand would pop back and forth. It would pop, 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 pop every time I bent it. And then all of a sudden it popped and I couldn't straighten it unless I physically, manually took my thumb and straightened it out. And it really hurts. And what I had developed was a nodule on the surface, on the tendon. And it couldn't fit through the tendon sheath. And so it would pop through the tendon sheath and then it got stuck. And that's why I couldn't, straighten my finger back out. So what I had to do, I went to the doctor and they put me in a brace that kept my thumb immobile because they didn't want me bending my thumb. And I had to take ibuprofen. I had to massage it, ice it, did physical therapy. I had to push on it and, get it to break down a little bit. And the most important thing was I had to change the way I was texting because I got it because I was texting so much. Okay? And so now I don't use my thumbs all the time for texting. I use other fingers and try to vary it, or I voice text because I still have the nodule. It's just not inflamed all the time. Okay? And I can feel it sliding through my skin. Okay, so that's trigger finger. See how much you're learning? I hope you're taking notes on these things. Okay? So I was on my phone all the time. Plantar fasciitis, I've had this too. Yeah, very, very common in people who have to stand a lot. And a lot of us don't wear shoes that have adequate arch supports. That the arch of our foot is not supported, and that's where this plantar fascia is. So very, very painful when you stand, when you walk. It hurts on your heel. You get this burning, tearing feeling on the bottom of your foot. Best thing you can do is you want to ice it. It feels really good to roll your foot over like a glass bottle. A wine bottle works, or if you have like a glass soda bottle. And you use anti-inflammatories. My sister was really mean to me. She made me put my foot in an ice bath for 15 minutes. Wow, that's harsh. Well, I'm going to tell her she has to watch this video now so that she hears me. Curse you, Jamie. It hurt so much. I was like, it's so cold. Okay, so if you have a job where you stand or walk a lot, runners get this. Okay, and you want to make sure that you stretch out your feet. Go get a good foot massage and have them really stretch your foot.
A chiropractor is awesome.
Chiropractor, they can crack your feet, yeah. Yeah. So, and wear good shoes and vary your shoes. Don't always wear the same pair of shoes day after day after day. And make sure your shoes have arch supports. Know your feet. Some of you have really high arches, but shoes have kind of a middle arch. So if you have a high arch, you're going to get plantar fasciitis because your arch isn't being supported. Okay, and again, women get this more often than men. We get of course, right? All right, so this is the end of my lecture for today. If you didn't take notes on any of these conditions, listen back to the video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I will be posting this later today.
Try and run the full market.
Okay, leave me good comments. Let me know what I can do to improve.
I love the comments.